Hello everybody, this is my coming out story, which I've wanted to do for a really long time, and I'm happy to finally get it on film. So I came out of the closet and into self-realization at about 19, at the end of 18 into 19. It was actually just after my 19th birthday when I completely came out of the closet. So I don't have the typical gay story in which I've heard a lot with problems at high school and that kind of thing. I was on a very different path, at least in that aspect. I was homeschooled, so I didn't need to really worry about other people bullying me. And I come from a large family who is mostly Christian, and at the time that I came out was all Christian. So, I hadn't really acknowledged my sexuality in my early teenage years, even though subconsciously I think I was aware of it. Actually ended up being a really good subconscious liar, which made me a pretty false person. So in the social circles that I was in, because I wasn't a real person, I didn't have real friends. When I went to church and was hanging out with the youth group, it was more like they were tolerating me because they were being good Christians. And this was before anybody knew I was gay, even before I was admitting to myself that I was gay. So when I was 13, you start noticing different things, and you notice that you're different. That feeling of difference is overwhelming sometimes, I think. I never really associated it with being gay, though. I would tell myself things like, well, I'm just waiting for the right woman. The woman that I'm going to have a long-term relationship with, date, and then get married. Because in my mind's eye, I wanted to be a Christian preacher with a wife and a child. That's what I thought that I wanted. That's not what I really wanted, though. So when I was 16, I started going to church, and this was good because I've been homeschooled my entire life, and I didn't get out of the house often because of that, except for like when our parents took us camping, or we went out to eat, or we went running errands. But we didn't have any social contact with people really, except for my family. So it was a good thing that I had a big family. I've got 3 brothers and 1 sister, so I did have people to hang out with growing up. Just a very small pool of people who all still very much love and appreciate each other, even today, which is awesome. But church got me out to visit with other people. It showed me where some of the real world things were, how people react outside of my family, and different opinions and things like that. And I became very dedicated to that church. I was on fire for Christ, basically. And at that time, my sexual feelings towards other people started to grow. Those emotional needs for a partner in my life started to grow. And life became a little less undeniable. And I think maybe that I got so involved with the church at the time because I didn't want that straight lie to go away. I was straight, and by distracting myself with church, that became undeniably true, or so I thought. So a couple of years went by, and I graduated from my homeschool classes, and I started going to college. And still at this time pretty lonely. I basically went into class, did the class, left the class. Talked to students very rarely, didn't really communicate with anybody. And that would actually change. Really cool, honestly. I was also working at Taco Bell at the time, and Taco Bell was a good job for me. It was very supportive, and good people. I worked with good people there, good managers, good coworkers. We had a lot of fun while working there. hard times too, but what job isn't? This is when I really was starting to have strong thoughts on homosexuality. Still not, consciously verbalized, but I would see like maybe an advertisement in a bathroom, and something in the back of my head would go, "Yeah, you want that." Still to this day, no, I don't really want that. But what my brain wanted was the concept of the relationship between man, not man and woman. So my brain was going, "Hey, clue in, you're gay." And I was going, "No, I'm not. I'm straight, and I'm a Christian." Which, of course, wasn't true. So this started happening with more frequency. I started subconsciously and a little consciously checking out men more often and trying to find my way into the gay community. And I didn't realize that I was doing that at the time. Trying to find a way into the gay community, trying to get out of the closet. My subconscious mind was going, "Buddy, hey, come on, out of the closet." That's what was going on. So finally, while at the library, I picked up a book called Rainbow Road by Alex Sanchez, full well knowing that it was a gay novel. It was about 3 teenagers all coming to terms with their sexuality in different ways. One of the characters, I think his name was Simon or Philip, I don't remember. It's been almost 10 years now since I read that book. He was very out of the closet, but had to deal with emotional issues. And then I think the middle character, Kyle, he was also out of the closet and trying to deal with terms of loneliness and wanting to be in a relationship. He had a gay friend and he was gay himself, but that wasn't the relationship for him. So trying to deal with finding love and acceptance in the world outside of his parents. And find a partner was his issue. And then the main character, Jake or James, it was a J name, I could really relate to, because they start with him freaking out because he was wanting to go to this gay club, and at the same time saying, "I'm not gay, I've got a girlfriend, and I enjoy my relationship with her." And struggling with this and being angry with himself. And it hit me so hard, because that was where I was at. Here I am struggling with this sexual dilemma, and it just hit me. After reading that book, I read it immediately again. Once I got to the last page, I went right back around to the beginning page and I read it again. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. And for the next month, my life would spiral out of control, and a series of depression. There were some really hard events with that too. I remember trying to give myself the confidence to continue living, knowing that I was gay, trying to accept myself for who I was, and not having any kind of friendship support, not having any kind of family support in this situation, because they didn't know. And I remember wanting to tell my family and just not being able to do it, and trying to come up with one way after another, and thinking to myself as I was walking places, how am I going to tell them? How am I going to tell them? When am I going to tell them? I'm going to have to tell them. They aren't going to like this. And so, my parents are in the front of the car, and I'm in the back of the car, and we're driving over this bridge that goes across my city. And they're talking about the scouts and the dilemma with allowing gay scouts and gay scout leaders in. And they're talking about how that was absolutely wrong, and that the scouts couldn't do that and shouldn't do that. And I was going, great, they've never brought this up before, and here's this conversation right when I needed to connect with them, and right when I needed that family support. From all appearances, they weren't supportive at that moment. So that was rough, and I spiraled deeper into depression, and I was praying a lot. I was praying a lot. I was talking with Jesus a lot. I'd sit there and I'd ask him for emotional support, and I'd tell him everything that was going on in my life, and just trying to figure all of this out, trying to figure out if I wanted to be gay, and I knew I didn't want to be gay. I wanted to be straight. I wanted to keep on my path. I wanted to be a preacher and have that family. That was what I wanted. I just didn't realize that that's what I wanted. I didn't want that. The universe had other things for me in mind, and hey, it knows best. So I hit rock bottom because at the time I'd never dealt with depression that was that deep. It was so I spiraled really quickly into a very dark and very black depression without any kind of knowledge on how to deal with it myself, and without support from others. I couldn't deal with it. I couldn't bring it up with my church because, well, they're a church, and I couldn't bring it up with my parents because they didn't seem like they were accepting at the time, and people I brought it up with, like at work, in passing mention, weren't very helpful and weren't very close to me at the time. Mainly because I was such a fake person that nobody could get close to me because nobody knew the real me, not even me. So I became suicidal very quickly. And one night I decided I was going to go ahead and kill myself. So I went to sleep, woke up the next morning. As soon as I woke up, I left the house. I bought a bunch of Tylenol PM, didn't leave any notes, didn't tell anybody what I was doing by any means necessary, or anybody where I was going, and I took all of the Tylenol PM at once, and then I wandered around on this a nature trail that runs through our city near a river, and just walked along it and walked along it and walked along it, and I was just done. And at that point in time, I didn't regret this decision to off myself. I just did it. I just took all of these pills and was going to let myself die. And I remember just feeling more and more miserable. The first bottle of pills went down really, really easy because there were these gel caps and I had a drink. And then the second bottle was these stupid, the chalky pills, and I couldn't swallow those. And I remember having this Tylenol taste in the top of my throat and gagging on every single one of them. After a few hours, when I still hadn't passed out and I was still living and things hadn't gone my way, I had gotten the opinion that my suicide attempt had been a miserable fake. Or not a miserable fake, but a miserably ineffective. And I was so depressed and so miserable. So this guy that comes across, I have him call an ambulance for me. I have him call my parents for me, and so the ambulance gets to where I'm at. My parents get to where I'm at. The ambulance takes me away, and my parents follow them to the hospital. They take me into the ER. They wanted to keep me awake while I was in the ambulance. They didn't want me to fall asleep, and I was fading in and out of consciousness by then. Just there and then not there and then there and then not there. So they pumped my stomach, and that was rough. That was really rough. It's one of the hardest things I've ever had to go through physically in my life, but I managed to get through it because by that point in time I obviously wasn't going to kill myself, and I was going to continue living, which is good. Life does get better. It really does. And it's worth living. And I'm glad that I know that now, and I'm glad that I wasn't successful. If that's my takeaway message, that's it right there. I'm glad I wasn't successful. So, my parents come in while my stomach's being pumped, and they had to stand to the side while the doctors shoved a tube down my throat and a bunch of charcoal down my throat and told me what a good job I was doing. So, once the doctors were done with that, my parents and I had a little bit of space to talk with each other, and they came up and they wanted to know why. Why did I want to kill myself? And I told them that in that very shamed tone, that very exhausted and worn out, completely, I've been beaten and I've been defeated. The world is sitting on my shoulders. tone, I said, I'm gay, and I don't want to be. And they acknowledged that, and they stepped back, and they needed clearance and balance for a moment so that they could talk with each other. And that was good for me too, because I needed clearance and balance. I just admitted what felt to me at the time the greatest shame of my life. And their conversation, I found out much later, was that they were confused. They were like, that's why he wanted to kill himself, because he was gay? They couldn't see that as being as upsetting as it was to me. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate that that was my mom and dad's thought process. They're like, that's not worth dying over. That was the first step to acceptance for them. And that's awesome. I've got great parents because of that, just because of that. That's a comfort to me, and I really love that. They're awesome people because of just that one event. So the doctors came in, and they asked me if I was trying to kill myself. And being in this severe state of depression, I said yes, because I was. And then, of course, they got in a police officer who asked me the same thing. And because I said yes once again, and they had that in documentation, I had to spend 3 days in the hospital psychiatric ward so they could put me on suicide watch and make sure that I was mentally okay. I'm really glad that they did this, because I needed the clearance and the balance and kind of a reset on my life. And 3 days allowed that to happen. The doctors and the nurses were all very nice and very understanding. The psychologist was, as I thought psychologists would be, was kind of weird. He seemed more like the warden than anything else, because he was checking to see if I could leave. So my freedom depended on him. But he was the first psychologist that told me, there's nothing wrong with being a homosexual. It's normal. It's not a mental problem, and that's just who you are. While I was in the top of there, what was really important to me was I got to think, and I went, well, I can't kill myself. So what am I going to do? I'm going to be happy again, and that's worth living for. The fact that I was going to smile again, the fact that I was going to have good moments in life again, no matter what, no matter how bad life was, I was going to have good moments. That was okay. That meant I would be doing just fine at some point in the future. And I also came to the terms that I was going to have to accept my homosexuality, and from that point on, I was out of the closet. Everybody whom I know knows that I'm gay now, and anybody I meet, I let them know that I'm gay, and that's really important to me, because for so long I lied to myself. That started me on the path to myself, and coming out of the closet was such a good thing, because I was no longer a false person. I was a living and whole person. And because of that, people started liking me, and I made good, solid friends, friends to this day that I still have, and became a much more pleasant person, and a person that I enjoyed being around. So coming out of the closet was good. My parents did accept me, which was awesome. For a while, we tried this video series. My mom asked me if I wanted to see if I could become not gay. She broached that very gently, and I said, yeah, we'll give it a shot. So I watched this video series. I think it was through Exodus. Granted, that's an ineffective program, and it spreads this lie that you can change your sexuality, but it wasn't as cruel as a lot of people put it. The guy in the videotape, Cy Roger, actually had a lot of really good things to say on a psychological manner and in a compassionate way. But 2/3 through this series that her and I were watching together, I looked at her and I said, you know, this guy has great things to say, but none of it have to deal with homosexuality. That's not going to stop me from being gay. And that was it. That was all it took for us to stop watching these. And for her to come to more understanding and accepting of my sexuality. And her and I had a lot of conversations back and forth and gained insight and understanding. And my dad stayed pretty much quiet about it the whole time until much later. I never felt like he had a major problem with it. But later on, he let me know just how much he wasn't accepting it. He said I had to give it some thought, and he said, well, what am I going to do? Lose a son because of something like that? And just decided to keep a relationship with me regardless. And I think that's great. That's awesome for somebody who could have been very uncomfortable and was a Christian. That could have been awful. The only end of my life that didn't end up so well was the Christian end. I actually ended up leaving that religion. But that's a story for another day. And I'll give that story at some other point in time. So that's my coming out story. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it's helpful. So have a good day.